the Sunshine Coast Regional District Policing and Public Safety Committee for, oops, I got the wrong days, October the 15th. And before we can begin, I'd just like to acknowledge that we are gathered. SCRD Field Road offices are on the lands of the Sechelt Nation, and I am coming to you live from the Squamish territory on the west side of Howe Sound. There is we all have an agenda before us. Is that true? Everyone has the agenda. So is there any adjustments? I'm just going to look to Poppy. The item number 4, whether we're prepared, whether there's, I can make a few comments on it, but whether we want to keep that on as a verbal at this point?
Well, I think we can. Why can't we just mention it? Because we've been talking about this for like a year and a half, and we can just sort of let people know where we're at, right? Yes.
Okay. I'm happy to do that. Okay. So any other changes that people want to add on to the agenda? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. So we need a motion to adopt the agenda as stated. Firsted and seconded, and all those in favor. Thank you so very much. So we have an agenda, no presentations or delegations. We have the minutes from July 16th, 2020. Is there anything anyone wants to say about that? We just are actually receiving these for receipt. Is there anything anyone wants to draw attention to those minutes? No? Okay, so just a motion to receive that minutes, yes and yes. So all those in favor? Thank you. Minutes are received. We're going into our report. So this is item number 3. Annex B, we have Q3 and then the individual 4 months. I'm just going to ask, is it okay if I use people's first names in here, or we're okay with first names?
Oh, I'm good with me. Yeah, Poppy is great.
Oh, okay. So I'm just going to use first names. I'm not going to use the things that go in front of our names. Okay, so Poppy, if you want to lead off in terms of bringing our attention to the crime statistics for Q3.
Okay. So I mean, I don't know if you've sort of reviewed them. We're a little bit all over the map, I would say. It's been very hard to follow any particular crime trends right now, if that makes sense. I think COVID, things are just different. They're all over the map, and so we have sort of pockets of crime that'll happen, and we'll have break and enters, and they're fairly random. I guess I'll sort of start at the top. So with the curfew checks, we've had more curfew checks done. That is part in because we have more people on curfew again. So with COVID, and I think Dawn may have explained it because I wasn't at our last committee meeting, but with COVID, unless you committed a very serious offense or you're a repeat offender and it was not working for you to be in the community, you were released into the community on conditions. So we found we had more people actually out in the public on conditions. So we had more people to check. So our curfew checks overall were up a little bit higher here. September not as high. Lots of checks done in August, and that really has everything to do with COVID, because now in September, October, we are seeing more people held in custody because we aren't having the COVID outbreak concerns in the jail system. So that's that. Street checks is the next thing down the list. So as you've probably been following in the news, and I've talked about it and touched on it before, street checks, there's some concerns around racial profiling and different things that happen with street checks. And so the RCMP's been mandated to change how they do them, and we basically don't conduct random checks and input things about people unless it's related to a suspicious event, which then would be a file created. So you're not going to see street checks as a measurable anymore. for as long, I don't know how long that's going to last, whether they'll decide bringing street checks back and just ensuring there's a really strict policy. I don't know. The pendulum swings. Right now, it's swung the way to not do them. Foot patrols. And I think, I mean, I'm sure you guys have sort of read some of the media that's come out recently around some of the investigations that we've been doing. And I think I spoke, it might have been at the District of Seashell Committee of the Whole, and where I talked about how some of our GIS or General Investigation section, some of our officers are operating in a little bit more of a covert fashion, not so public with their foot patrols. So you're not going to see quite as many, because I'm putting some resources toward some actual identified suspects in things like break and enters and drug trafficking. So our focus is around more of sort of the guns and gangs and drug trafficking, not as much around the visibility. It's still there, but as compared with last year, our foot patrols are down a little bit. Thefts from motor vehicles. It can range from anything. Theft from motor vehicle can actually be a lost license plate or VAL tag. It still falls under that same thing. So some of it can look a little alarming. Sunshine Coast Regional District, the quarter says 14, as opposed to last year we had 7 thefts from motor vehicles. So I looked into it and had a look around at what some of these things were, and some of them were just lost license plates and decals, not so much people going into vehicles and stealing things. And I don't see anything alarming in those numbers. Break and enters. So down a little bit in the District of Seashell, but honestly, that was because the year before we had such a spike with all the thefts at the golf courses and Mason Bus Yard and all that. This year, we've still seen our break and enters, unfortunately, higher than I'd like them to be. And we had our general investigation section, in conjunction with some help from the public, we ended up stopping a vehicle that went up the Trout Lake Forest Service Road that had been followed by some homeowners who believed that was the vehicle that had been at their residence and into one of their private storage bins on the property and had broken in. And so when our members got there, the people had left the vehicle and taken off on foot. And inside the vehicle were items that we did a search warrant. We towed the vehicles, brought it back to the detachment, granted a search warrant to search that vehicle, and located a bunch of stolen items inside that we were able to link back to other break and enters, including the theft from the tow truck. So we had the tow truck broken into a few weeks ago, and the Slim Jim and a couple of tools taken out of it that are used specifically to enter into locked vehicles. We very much lucked out because it was the very next day that we stopped that vehicle and located the Slim Jim inside. So we believe that those break-in tools for vehicles were never used for any other crime, that we were managed to get them back the very next day, and it was the theft happened in the middle of the night. So we have some issues. Stevens Way in Half Moon Bay is causing us some issues. We have some people that are staying up there, and it's becoming an area of concern. We're getting lots of complaints from neighbors and stuff around suspicious activity, and that's the area in which the vehicle in question from that other file came from. And so it's one of our target areas, our hotspot areas that our members are focusing on to do proactive patrols and some overt type surveillance to interrupt criminal activity. We have a problem property on Henderson in Roberts Creek that I know Andrea's falls into his area, and he's well aware because he's been CC'd in the correspondence. And so Corporal Phil Atui is managing that portfolio. There's an active open file investigating some of the allegations around noise bylaw, possible firearms act, and mischief, neighborhood disputes, and so we're actively working on that property. Yeah, so a lot of the I dug into the break and enters for the regional district, and a couple of them came out of Madeira. The IGA and the shopping center up there had a couple of break and enters, just shipping container out the back. The Back Eddy pub had some kayak covers taken, bicycles stolen from Langdale. We had what came in as a break and enter on Garden Bay, but it was actually a mental health call. We've had some mental health calls and some issues up in Egmont. I'm not sure if you guys are aware the issues that we're having, but I'm going to bring them up here. So we have 2 people that live in Egmont that live where they're accessible only by water taxi for the police to attend. And so we have been requested by Vancouver Coastal Health to apprehend one and both of these people several times over this year for examinations or concern that they're a safety to themselves or others, which requires a 2-officer at minimum response via water taxi at the detachment's cost, which is almost $400 a pop. Our officers responded to an assault there 2 weeks ago, not even, and it required a 3-officer response. Our officers were injured. The suspect wasn't injured and was brought in and taken to the hospital. But it's just some of the things that you wouldn't see captured necessarily on the reports, but the time and the resources to reach the communities and to apprehend under the Mental Health Act. Something we'd rather not have to do, but it's definitely something that we see quite a few files for. Our road checks, we haven't been doing a lot just because of COVID. It's one of those things where having extra and maybe not necessary contact with the public at a roadblock, we're trying to minimize unnecessary contact, so therefore our members are just pulling over vehicles after observed offenses. You may have seen the article that the Coast Reporter picked up that we just put out yesterday in regards to it was a Motor Vehicle Act offense where we stopped this fellow because we were aware that he was a suspended driver. And so he was arrested without incident. There was no issue there. However, during the search of his person, located a handgun on his person. And that created an arrest for other offenses, because obviously firearm concealed on your person is an offense. And search incidental to his arrest further and the vehicle, and we located cash and illicit drugs and paraphernalia consistent with drug trafficking. And so he's been held in custody, and he's left the coast in custody, and we're anticipating quite a few more charges for him. So that's sort of where we've been putting our focus is more on the serious stuff. And the traffic related stuff will often bring us the serious stuff. We've noticed a lot of abandoned vehicles and stuff that we believe are stashed and are being used for crime, and they're being left in certain places. So we've been towing those vehicles or surveilling those vehicles and just really working on intelligence-led policing. Everything else on there is I'd say self-explanatory. Our violation tickets, we've issued a few more violation tickets this week. We have some more training for our officers. We just did our annual firearms qualifications a few weeks ago. We did because all our training was very much suspended or altered because of COVID protocol. We're finally getting things ramped up again to have the training. And so we had our carbine recertifications. We have our conducted energy weapon, which is the taser, the CEWs. We have recertifications and new user courses coming up the end of the month. And this weekend we have roadside screening device training here. And I've been getting the trainers to come to the Sunshine Coast rather than send our police officers off coast. We're bringing trainers in. Because our officers are all in the same bubble. We're all in the same cohort together. And so it's easier just to bring one person in that wears masks and PPE, and it saves costs. We're only paying for one person to travel here rather than paying for our individuals to go off coast. And that sort of was the main focus on for me under the annual performance plan, was to streamline training and bring more training to the coast for the members, which reduces costs. And I think that kind of covers it. I think it's just, for me, it's, we're acutely aware, as you may have read in that newspaper article, that this was the 28th firearm that was seized as a result of police investigations, not just people turning in firearms, but as a result of us investigating a firearms offense and seizing firearms at the scene, or getting search warrants and going into residences and taking more firearms for public safety. It sort of depends on the file, but it's definitely not the numbers that we would normally see on the Sunshine Coast, which is good that we're getting them off the streets. And but we're noticing that people are carrying firearms, or we're encountering more behavior using firearms as a threat, and obviously that's a concern for us. And so we're taking all the steps once we seize a firearm from somebody, to go through the court-ordered process to have that firearm seized and destroyed. And depending on the offense, most of them is to have that person prohibited from owning firearms and have their any licenses, if they had them, to be revoked. So that takes more process. It's not just the offense that we're dealing with, but it's actually taking it a step further, applying for a firearms prohibition through the courts. It's a whole nother process, but it's extremely important, and that's what we're working on. And that's it, I think, for me. I can take questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. So I'm just going to catch up with the hands as they come up here. So right now we got David and then Donna. So go ahead.
Thank you, Staff Sergeant Hallam. A while ago, there was a bit of correspondence came out with regard to the Report a Crime program. And in conjunction with that, there was the RCMP app, which has the Report a Crime feature in it. Has there been any more consideration of using that as a tool here on the coast to help you folks?
So are you talking about the Light Catch, that app? Or was this to do with the online crime reporting? So we've got a couple things. So
yeah, well, the Richmond RCMP detachment has an app, and it has sort of community information, a crime map, a report a crime feature. And I'm just wondering, we had exchanged some email back and forth about it, and I'm just wondering if there'd been an opportunity to investigate it further.
No, you've lit a fire under my bum. I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. We had our managerial review that was here, and so I had to do some action plan on that. It's annual performance plan and it's mid-year assessments. So I've been a little bit maxed on some other things. My apologies, because that is a really good thing, and I think it will be an excellent for the coast, and I will action that, I promise. But I can speak to the online crime reporting. So we do have the online crime reporting where the public can go on to the RCMP website. You can go, if you Google RCMP, Sunshine Coast RCMP, you can go right to the report, online crime reporting, and we've seen a lot of people reporting that way, and it's working very well. So for things that there's no suspect, and there's no it's not a firearm, or it's not like a document that, like, such as lost driver's license or license plate, but more of the basic thefts, like, say somebody's bicycle was taken from the carport or something, and there's no witnesses and there's no suspects. It makes for a great way for people to not have to wait on call and on hold to report it and get all the information and upload photos and everything. So it's been really good. We had in the first week we had 15 people put in calls for it, so that was good.
David, did you have anything else to?
Just very briefly, Mayor Seegers and Director Pratt and I all sit on the CAT committee, and one of the issues that sort of has surfaced there is the amount of your resources that are being used to deal with what in fact are mental health issues, and you referenced it yourself, that it is a big concern. Team Sunshine Coast, when we had our minister meetings, we did bring up the fact that particularly mental health resources here on the coast are taxed to the limit, and that more funding and more resources be allocated to them. But obviously it seems to be a big component of what you're now being tasked to deal with, which is out of your usual training expertise and sort of general line of duty. So I think the one case you cited in Egmont certainly indicates that it is a big issue with you folks.
Well, and it comes in waves, and we've really seen an increase, and whether that's COVID related or just the fact that that our resources, not police necessarily, but just our community resources, are taxed, right? And we've seen sort of some behaviors that are concerning. I mean, our members, when they attended to the one call, were walking up the driveway or up the hill to the house, and the subject ripped the door off the hinges and threw it at my police officers. What's the intent of it, right? I mean, it's not the intent is somebody's not well, but we still have to manage the behaviors, and that requires intervention options, are de-escalation tools, and our members spent hours with that investigation and that call trying to de-escalate this person, and they managed to, but we still have to deal with the behaviors when they're unsafe in the community. The police are the people that have the intervention options. We are trained to deal with it, and some of it just comes because of the fact that we're subjected to have to understand and learn and deal with this stuff, and we have the training, but we're not mental health professionals, but we're trained to deal with the behaviors, I suppose, right? But I think it's just important for us as a team Sunshine Coast, all of us, that you all understand what that looks like, and that my officers do get injured, and we don't want to have to be apprehending people. We understand, but we have to deal with the behaviors, and when they're a danger to themselves or others, that we have to deal with it. And so our resources get moved around, and can be taxed pretty quickly. If we have a call in Egmont and then a call in Gibson's and then another one in Sechelt, depending on what time of day and how many resources I have, we're taxed. And then if we get a call where we need to be on the boat, I'm calling in overtime resources. And we're unique over here, and nothing's new. I mean, it's been like this forever. It just kind of comes in waves, but right now, mental health calls where somebody is a danger to themselves or other requires an absolute 2 police officer response. Just to work on that de-escalation and the safety of the patient and the police officers.
Okay, so next on the list I see Donna, and then followed by Darnelda. So Donna, go ahead there.
Okay, this is not my question. Jerry, you need to promote somebody from the waiting room or the gallery into the meeting.
Oh, Matt.
There? Okay. My question was also COVID related. I read online that a lot of people are in tough domestic situations, and that the isolation of COVID has exacerbated that? Has that been your experience?
We thought at first that we were going to see more domestic violence. I wouldn't say that we've had an increase. Our domestic violence has remained the same, whether that's good or bad. I don't know, right? We do have our domestic violence coordinator, Constable Karen Whitby. She looks after all things domestic, sexual violence, youth violence. And she always reports to me, and we haven't seen an increase in that, where we kind of thought we would, but we haven't. Even our mental health calls on paper don't appear to have increased, but there's some behaviors that have been concerning to us, especially when there's weapons involved and firearms involved, with people waving firearms or threatening people with firearms. That's a whole nother level of violence, especially if there's a mental health component. And that's, our priority is we can go for weapons prohibitions, especially if there's a mental health component. And we have a really good relationship with Vancouver Coastal Health and the hospital and mental health. Just for your guys' awareness too. So kind of on the same topic, Donna, is that Constable Nicole Hall, she has moved into our youth policing position. And what we decided to do, she's quite a multitasker. She's got a lot of energy and we're tapping into it. So she's going to be working 2 shifts a week. Like we're not sure what the hours are going to be, but a Car 67 program, a mental health car. So she is going to team up with Vancouver Coastal Health and one of the outreach workers. And we're going to be doing some proactive stuff. She's going to be doing that. So we're going to test the waters on that and see how that goes, especially with a youth part in it. But we really want to see what we can do with that, because I think it's really important. And if she's able to liaise with Vancouver Coastal Health Mental Health and really keep the members aware of where some of these higher risk, vulnerable people are at in their lives and what's going on for them, it makes our response better.
Is that good, Donna? So Darnelda is next up.
Poppy, did you want to talk about stats and mental health calls?
Yeah, but I don't have them in front of me.
No, I'm just like, we talked about the fact that they're not actually considered part of your reporting.
Yeah, so Stats Canada, there's certain types of statistics, a little bit of tongue twister there, that the RCMP and to policing agencies report to Statistics Canada. Mental health isn't one of them. It's a provincial situation. It doesn't go to Stats Canada. So the thing that I've noticed, and I can speak openly about this, is that when they're looking at resourcing, especially for the province, they're looking at pop to cop ratio, so how many police officers to how many people in your community. And they also look at what our crime statistics are, this crime severity index, which comes directly from Stats Can reporting. So Darnell and I've had some conversations with several of you on this conference call. The thing is if they're not getting the mental health calls, they're not receiving that information on how many calls that the Sunshine Coast RCMP responds to that's mental health. They're not getting the full picture. So say we have, that call in Egmont, it was a call of a complaint of an assault where the complainant did not want charges. They were more concerned about the health and wellness of this person. So there was no charges laid. It wasn't assault. So it wasn't reported to Stats Canada because it's not a stat that, like, not a conviction, or it wasn't, founded, so to speak. It was more the mental health aspect. So every time we get called by the hospital to go apprehend this person or the other person up there, Stats Canada doesn't know. In the meantime, 2 and 3 members, like we had to call people out for that, the one where he threw the door at our police officers, and our police officers literally slid down the dock and shredded their clothing and stuff because it was metal docking, and it just was, there was a lot of potential for people to be seriously hurt, including that subject, but it doesn't get taken into account for our statistics. And I think that was, one of the things where it's like, okay, so we don't have, we maybe don't have, say, the armed robberies or the, aggravated assaults, but we're still in a very much complex investigation and public police safety around the mental health call, but it's not reported. It's using the same, if not more resources, 3-officer response up to Egmont, plus the cost for me to pay overtime for police officers to go, and the cost to pay the water taxi, but it's not accounted for anywhere. And it looks like Sunshine Coast just has some traffic offenses that day, when it's really not. There's more going on.
I guess why I wanted to bring that up is, we are starting to look at how many members do we require here on the Sunshine Coast. We also know Gibson's will be coming on board in the next, year and a half, probably, we're anticipating, right, mid-2022. And so if those statistics dealing with mental health that require 2 officers to deal with, if they're not actually considered as part of the stats, how do we justify having additional members be put here by the province? Mm-hmm. So, that's some of the conversations we're trying to have behind the scenes. I did bring it up with the MP on our call on Friday, and he's going to look at it, take that up with Stats Canada, because that is, I think particularly in rural communities where we don't have the mental health resources, and the RCMP are tasked with dealing with these, it needs to be included. It's something. Well,
yeah, and the hospitals don't have the capacity to keep people, so they're often released back into the community, and then we get called again, or and this is definitely no slight on the hospital, because I get it. We're all in resource crunch times, but the hospital doesn't always have the capacity to manage some of the mental health patients that they have, and we get called quite regularly to assist the hospital with patients who are acting out and are not compliant when they're trying to administer medications and whatnot. So we get called to the hospital quite a lot to prevent an assault. So it would be scored as what we call ZZZ, non-reportable to Stats Can, an assault, because the reason we're going to the hospital is that the nurses and doctors fear for their safety as they're trying to manage a patient who needs treatment, but the patient's kicking at them and may assault them. And so that's how it's scored. How we would score that is we're assisting the hospital so that they don't get hurt. Somebody doesn't get seriously hurt. But it's a ZZZ assault, and it does not go to Stats Can. And there's no way to play with those stats. Like I get error reports. Like I can't make it an assault, so it goes there. Like it's a non-reportable. There's nothing I can do about that. It's just the way it's set up. But I just on this topic of resourcing. Darnell, I got your email. I'm sorry I haven't answered it yet, but we're in a pretty good spot right now as far as resourcing. I've secured some resources to transfer here from other detachments. Some people that I've worked with before who are eager to come here. We've just secured 2 people for sure, and then possibly 2 more, which it bodes well for us by Christmas time. So I'm very thankful for that. But it comes down to me as a commander looking for people to come here and trying to do my best to sell people wanting to come here. And but all of the detachments right now are finding, we just don't have as many recruits coming through. It's not just the RCMP, it's all the police forces, and we're all sort of jockeying and vying for the resources that are out there. We're politely fighting over people, and I had to fight to get these 2 people here because there was 3 other detachments that wanted them, and they chose to come work for me, and I'm thankful. I have that relationship with them, and I'm thankful. And they're going to be a great asset here, and it's excellent. But depot, RCMP depot was closed for a while because of COVID and coming up with protocols. So we're behind on our recruits coming out of there. And we have lost a few police officers out of the Lower Mainland. They've been letting us know who's going and to what other police forces because of the pay disparage, you know what I mean, like our pay. So our
Disparity,
police officers, disparity. The first class constables in the RCMP make about 86,000, and the first class constables in the cities, in the Vancouvers and the Edmontons and stuff, are making over 100 or more. And so we've got members working in Surrey alongside members that are working in Delta or Vancouver that are making $15,000 to $20,000 right off the hop more to do the exact same job. So the RCMP is in the midst, like the Treasury Board is in negotiations with the National Police Federation to secure a collective agreement, which should see some wage parity. We're not going to be the top, but at least we'll be competitive. Hopefully within the next 12 to 18 months, we should have something, and that will go a long way for our recruitment and retention, because a lot of people want to be a Mountie. A lot of people want to be RCMP. It's just the bottom line is how much are you taking home to your family? You're going to put your life on the line. You're going to do it in Vancouver, or are you going to do it in Richmond? Where do you want to, so I just want them to come work here because it's an amazing place to live and work, and doing my best to get people.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. I think I got Donna here. Donna's hand is up, and then followed by David again.
I'm always happy to disparage pay, particularly SCRD directors, but that's another topic. Elphinstone is not as exciting as Roberts Creek, I'm sure, but I do have a couple of notorious properties in my area that I hear a good deal about. So maybe we could catch up sometime, privately on the status of those properties. Because
We've had some good stuff on one of yours. Some trailers have been moved.
Yes, I saw that. That's awesome.
So some things. There's been enough pressure between Marvin and Corporal Atui. So we've seen some movement there. But yes, you and I can have an offline for sure.
Sure. Thanks.
Okay, and now we have David. David, you have something to say there.
Just back to the mental health thing for a moment. In a perfect world, were the local mental health facility, fully equipped, would they be able to handle some of the issues you're dealing with, or would they still fall to you? And in the event that they do still fall to you, I'm assuming it would be appreciated if the municipalities and the district advocated to whoever's ear we're able to bend, that the stats you're having to deal with respect to mental health are recorded to indicate the amount of time and resources that are being directed to them.
I mean, I think we've, from what I talked to, because we have our Lower Mainland Commander conference calls every 2 weeks. And, some of the bigger centers are seeing the same things. It's very similar for all of us. In theory, having places for people for mental health and detox, that sort of stuff, we can always use more of that. I mean, that would be helpful for a place so that people aren't brought in, triaged, and then released until there's a bed available in 2 weeks. But by then they might not be as eager to be sober because they've fallen back into wherever they're at in their lives. So yes, 100% that would help. The danger, I think that the RCMP will always, from what I can see, be involved in the public safety part of the mental health piece, because it can be very unpredictable, and violence can escalate really quickly. And sometimes, people who are in a mental health crisis or a combination of mental health with addiction are superhuman and display some pretty superhuman stuff that unless you're trained to deal with the physicality around it. I think that part we're always going to have a role to play, and I think I think we're very progressive on the coast. We just need some more, and I think Vancouver Coastal Health is trying to get people here, but I think the CAR 67 and the teaming up and assessing and having those mental health workers in our back pocket working with us is going to be key. It's just how do we do that with our current resource load, and that's where I'm at for requesting more members. If we can fill them, hopefully, but hopefully we can get granted at least a couple more from the province and then we can look at, that CAR 6-7 program as something that we implement as a full-time thing. I think it would be imperative.
May I ask, I don't know what CAR 6-7 is.
So it's a mental health car. And so basically what it is, it's a uniformed police officer with a mental health outreach worker, a counselor, somebody with mental health and addictions experience. We have outreach teams here, ICM teams, intercase management teams with specialized training that the idea was to go and do outreach to where people are, like go to where the people are. If somebody requires an injection for a medication that helps keep them stable, why can't we go to them with the nurse, give them the injection and leave them where they're comfortable in their own home? But instead, the way it works now is there's a warrant issued. The police are asked to go apprehend them, bring them to the hospital where they will get that injection, and then they're released to get home somehow. And I think that outreach, with the assistance of police would is an ideal, right? That's what the CAR 6-7 program is, Mark, is where that uniform member with a mental health worker, they will respond to some of the mental health calls rather than just the uniform members. And most, I'd say on the coast, most of our mental health workers, they're going to know who it is where we're going. They're going to have their medication history. They're going to have their doctors, not the knowledge around what's going on in that person's life and the way that they can be best supported and who their doctor is and what their current situation is. And I mean, and then if it still doesn't work, okay, but that's best case scenario. It's working in other places, but it's bigger centers with more resources. We're just in that weird size where we're not quite big enough, but we're big enough that,
So it is an RCMP program.
Yeah, it's okay. Always in with the health authority, and it's happening all across Canada. But we have, like, Surrey has the cars. I think Nanaimo. There's I think Richmond. Like, I've seen them. Like, if you Google, like, they call them different things. CAR 37, CAR 67. I don't know. They have different names. But if you Google that, you'll find the news articles about the different RCMP and probably Vancouver. I'm sure Vancouver PD is doing it too, right? And so. It's just the bigger places that are doing it, and we would love to be progressive and do that too.
Is there a place for local government to put its advocacy behind that? Where does that end up?
Well, I don't think it needs it necessarily because we've already done all the work. Like, honestly, we've already had the meetings with Vancouver Coastal Health. We've already found the workers who are willing to go, and now we've got one of our RCMP officers who's ready to team up. We just haven't started it yet. Yesterday was her first day. So I think we're ready to go. It's just a matter of, what does this look like? Is this going to work? And is this the best use of our resources to do that? And so that's where we're testing it out.
Okay. Darnelda, you got your hand up again?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to address the mental health piece and the advocacy piece. I think where we can be of assistance is advocating with the province around mental health funding for our health authority so that they can get some more of the resources that they need. Another place that we may want to start consider looking at is something like a detox center. right? So some kind of mental health detox center that is local. I have had a conversation with Chief Paul about that because he indicated he believes that there is some funding through First Nations Health Authority. And so, we will look at pursuing something like that. So what we're hearing from on the CAT team, et cetera, is that when somebody's ready for treatment and they're ready to go now, and it's incumbent upon us to get them into someplace as quick as possible. If they have to go off coast and they have to wait a month or two to get in there, by that time it's too late. They don't want to do it anymore. So it's how do we support the rehabilitation, the treatment pieces, right? So those are the advocacy pieces that we can do. We can't, obviously it's not our role to put funding into that, but those are places that we can advocate to other levels of government and other departments.
Lori, you were briefly up there, or you had something?
Yes, I can't go into too much details, but I do know that as a board, as an SCRD board, we will likely be seeing something coming forward within the next couple of months from the health providers within the community or health support regarding mental health and a proposal around that. I can't go into details at this time, but because they're just solidifying a few things, but it's exciting and hopefully we'll see something coming forward soon as a proposal. So, and continuing the conversation, I know Darnelda and I were on a call with Poppy and some Mayor Beamish and a few others. Gosh, it must have been about 3 weeks ago now, Darnelda? And yeah, we know that it's a huge issue within our community, and it's that timeliness piece and about getting that support in there while someone is ready to be helped. And so we definitely need to do some more advocacy provincially and federally as well in order to help our local RCMP.
And Donna, you're up there.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether we had looked into any partnership opportunities with Powell River on this. They must have the similar problem, and they have 50% less population than we do.
I haven't partnered with Powell River other than doing some presentations, some mental health presentations for like our own members and sharing some information around traveling criminals. Powell River belongs to Island District, believe it or not. So they are part of Vancouver Island. And so we're not even on the same server. So like when I run a name of somebody, if I don't do what's called a portal search, where I get what the person does, Vancouver, not Powell River. Like they're on a different server even than I am. They belong to the Island District. So we have some connection there because one of the girls that one of the police officers that works here is from Powell River, family's there. And so there's like, I mean, I'm friends with the commander, like, and that sort of thing, but it's, we're not partnered with them really on anything. Little bit of more, it's more information sharing, but it's definitely informal. There's nothing that I'm doing with them, so to speak.
Okay, so bit of a roundtable been going on there. When it started from the stats, we spent mental health is the reoccurring theme that seems to come to this committee frequently over and over again. So is there, I think we're shooting for a 2:30 end here, more or less, plus or minus. Is there anything else about the stats that anyone wanted to chime in on? No? Okay. Okay, so we'll move on to number 4, and I think it's properly titled vehicle station, not a vehicle station. So the idea is to have a a vehicle there, not have a station there. So there's just a little bit of typo. So Poppy and I have I've been participating as an electoral director, and Poppy has been driving this initiative. So do you want to go for a bit there, Poppy, and then I could kind of do kind of a local government land use aspect to it?
Sure. Yeah. So when I think I spoke to this, oh God, a long time ago, just around in a couple of the places that I worked, one was Port Alice, one was Quadra Island. We had to go by boat to get to other locations. Once there, we had marked police vehicles parked in covered areas, in secure areas where we could just walk up from the dock, hop in the police car, and then go to where we needed to go. So when I moved here, the members were telling me that they would go to Gambier, and it was quite the hike to get places, and they were commandeering personal vehicles to do that. And I said, well, let me look into how much work it is to use a place on miled out. So it's a RCMP vehicle that's hit its mileage limit and is going to just cost too much to repair if we keep adding mileage to it. But it belongs to my fleet, and I could put it where I want it if I want. So I spoke with our procurement, our CMP procurement. They do the leasing, so they're in charge of looking after the dock and the leasing for Gibson's for where our police boat is. So they said, oh yeah, we're good with that. Just tell us where you want it, like if you've got any ideas. So we reached out. I had my police officers who've worked here for quite a while sort of start doing that work for me to find out where a good place was. Long story long, we had hoped we could park a vehicle in the secure lot where BC Hydro and BC TELUS has a lot, but it's not big enough. They didn't really want us to park in there, but that we could use beside it or possibly park at the community center. But it requires, like, the RCMP would pay to have the area fenced and to make sure that that it's a good place to park. And so I asked Mark to get involved since it's his area, because I wasn't fair, like there was sort of not knowing the area and not really knowing who was the best person to talk to in regards to this. And was this something that we wanted? I mean, this is where it came up, where it was like, okay, because the paramedics had said to me, oh, can we use your car? And so it was kind of, it became like, okay, maybe there should be a community safety vehicle. And it would still, like, for right now, the way it would be a marked police vehicle, but it wouldn't have all of the stuff in it. It would have bars in the prisoner compartment in case we had to pick somebody up, arrest them, and transport. But so now Mark and I have been talking about making it more of a community safety vehicle. So, and the other thought is, does it have to be a marked police vehicle? Could I have one of a miled out unmarked police vehicle? And the problem is with the RCMP vehicles, we are self-insured. We don't, so if somebody else other than a police officer was to drive it, and they crashed it, it comes right out of my budget, my Sunshine Coast RCMP budget. So there's some liability issues by letting somebody else drive it. I could, in an emergency, ask a paramedic. I could say to a paramedic, sure, you can drive it. It's an emergency, drive my car. But it's not really supposed to be used that way. And then it was like, is this a good idea? Do we have enough people that need it? Would we use it? But we have had quite a few files where people have fallen off boats and they've come up onto shore. We've had some people with some violence and some weirdness this past 2 years. Not the residents of Gambier, but people going there and some problem properties. And so we're still just kind of going, okay, like, is this what we want? And if we can come at it from a community safety vehicle, not just like the police aren't going there to do proactive enforcement and pull cars over and stuff. It's to respond to calls safely and move paramedics or other emergency services around the island as and when needed.
And so you're still looking stuck. The process is still stuck on finding a location. We're still there. Okay.
And that's,
so
yeah, and that's where we're at.
So, yeah, so one of the, in some ways, this has become almost a land use issue in that requirements is you need power, you need a secure place, and you need some ownership. And there is only one parcel of land in the New Brighton area, which is public assembly, and that's where the community hall is. It's all private land, so you can either leave it on the right of way, which the majority of people leave their vehicles on the right of way there, or so in some ways it's kind of, the RCMP has increased their service level with a new improved boat in 2017, and that it almost needs an anchor. That's how I see it, as a place to get out of your boat if you need to, and it's also supporting Howe Sound more broadly, not just Gambier Island. It's if you want to put a boat somewhere, you got to get to the land. So it's there has been some concern on the part of residents that this is a police presence opposed to helping us out. So this is there a role for this community to kind of elevate that in terms of because land use planning belongs with Islands Trust. They are supportive of RCMP and Coast Guard. This is part of their advocacy. So I'm not sure if we can somehow encourage BC Hydro, TELUS, even the community association to, because it's never had to be done before. So we don't really know how to do it.
Right.
So
well, the RCMP is willing to pay to fence the area and to do some upgrades to a certain extent. They haven't told me how much,
Right.
but their procurement, that's part of the procurement, is creating these facilities. And like, I mean, they're not going to build a whole building or anything, but they're definitely willing to fence and do some work so that we can make it happen. They were also willing to pay a private citizen to allow us to park on private land. We had somebody identified, however, there was some concerns around whether there was going to be if we were going to be able to stay there long term, and so that didn't pan out. But that also is very ideal. We'd have no problem having a leasing agreement with a private residence, but they may not want a police vehicle on their property. It's good or bad, right? So ideally close to a dock so that we don't have to walk too far, because if time is of an essence, it's good. You know, what's the point of having a truck if it's nowhere near where you need it?
And the current, I'm going to call it the compound, the hydro compound, is it's a half a kilometer walk uphill. There's no street lights. It's a dark place, right? It's not, so.
And that's what we were used to. Like, that's the same. Port Alice, it was up.
Okay.
We shared it with the fire hall on Old Quatsino. Cortez was in a private residence, quite a little hike up the hill to private residence. They had a detached garage, and we had a key, and that's where our vehicle was. And it was both places. The vehicles were plugged into trickle chargers, and nothing of value left inside. So there's nothing that anybody could take or damage or use. So was really just to move people around, to get to people quick and help as a community, so.
Okay, so we got some background now. So we got some ideas coming from, we got Darnelda and Andreas with some thoughts here. So Darnelda, go ahead.
I'm wondering, is there like a Gambier Community Association or a community group that this could be taken to?
I can fill in the gap. Yes, it's called the Gambier Island Gambier Community Center Society,
Okay.
and they have the compound at the lands where BC Hydro and TELUS is there, and that has been their motion that has come out of their executive, is that it has to be adjacent to this existing fenced area right now, and this is about, is a building permit needed? What kind of permitting is in there? And so they kind of said, work it out. This is the boundary. It's got to be attached to this existing compound. And because they're feeling pressure from the community, that a portion of the community says, we don't like the presence, and then the other portion which is going, we've changed enough as an island community that we're looking for support. There's more than enough tragedy in the past in Gambier Island that people would have been thrilled to have a little bit more of a police presence at certain times. So it's being pursued, and it's stuck.
But I guess what I'm saying is, has this been a community conversation, or has it been, the executive? Because from what Poppy's saying, I mean, if in some places it's somebody's private garage that they have a key to, it doesn't have to be at that location. All they're looking for is a place to put the vehicle. And maybe a bigger community conversation could actually have somebody come forward with something like that.
Yes, but has it been an organized community meeting opposed to neighbors lobbying neighbors and internal discussion? It's very much there has not been I believe it was 2 years ago, there was a community meeting about support, and this is where possibly one of the ideas of this community response came out. But there is some resistance, right? But there has not been I would say, a robust community consultation to try to solve this problem. No, I would say, yeah, it hasn't been done.
And I know in the past, before COVID, directors have gone to islands, for example, and had, we're going to have our annual meeting, and, everybody come and we'll talk about your issues, all that kind of stuff. You can't do that now. So it makes it more difficult.
But it is the Gambier Community Center Society is a key piece right now, yeah, and we've been pursuing, yeah. So I'm not sure that answers everything that more or less, yeah. We're trying. On the list, we had Matt. Andreas was there. Andreas, no, Matt.
Yeah, I just feel like I have to throw out this idea of some kind of car share type model. So maybe it's not a dedicated police vehicle, but it's a vehicle that the police could get access to. And then that's less of a police presence, so it may help with the community perception. It adds value to the community, and it's an option. Might not have the bars. It may not be available 100% of the time, but that could be something that you might want to look into.
The only reason, not the only reason, but mine's free to the public, right? So the RCMP will pay to release that space, will pay to fence it, and I will supply a vehicle at no cost to the community. So that was sort of where that comes from. It's one of those things that doesn't cost the community anything. I have to pay for gas. I'm insured. That's all. I don't know what unmarked vehicles I have right now, but then it goes back to the same thing as who do I allow to drive it and what kind of liability is that, right? So it's a tough one. I get what you're saying, though, for sure. I just was offering that as an opportunity for members and for us to move people around if we need to and get people quickly. But yeah, and I don't really want my members commandeering private vehicles, because there's a lot of liability to that. If we're transporting a patient or a subject in somebody else's personal vehicle and something happens, that's a little concerning to me. That's my thing, why I kind of wanted it to be a police vehicle.
Yeah, and I'll add, it's the RCMP is willing to increase their service level. They're providing the resources, and they're hitting a bit of a, I'm going to call it a political wall. I think it's a political wall here. So one thing that could be done is I'm almost proposing a motion that the committee write to the Islands Trust to get on board and support this initiative to end up with, because it's part of their OCP for Gambier Island, it's part of their advocacy, because they're in charge of the land use planning, and they might have something to offer in terms of prompting. So that's up for consideration right now. So I'm if that would be helpful to have is SCRD doesn't do land use on Gambier Island, which is kind of different than on this side of the water. So there's this other, some people call it a special purpose local government. Bing's Islands Trust is sometimes what they call it. So whether that would be useful. So look into the electeds. Would it hurt?
I'm just going to make a point of order that I don't believe the committee can write to anybody. The committee makes a recommendation to the FCRD.
Yes, that would be the intent, that this committee makes a recommendation to board to support this initiative and offer support wherever possible. Anyone interested in that idea? Okay, maybe not. Oh, Donna?
I think it's a good idea. All it would take on the island for a couple of the people who are opposed to this is to have one of their people need emergency evacuation or anything, and then they'll wonder, where is it? Why isn't it here? So,
well, and it's within the Islands Trust advocacy piece. This is part of their advocacy. It's not in the SCRD advocacy because of we're not land use planning. So I'm kind of thinking that this is a place for the SCRD to reach out to the Islands Trust to ask if they would, because it's coming through the police committee, and it's got to go to Islands Trust to hopefully spawn the interest on the island. So we're going to have to wrap this up in a few minutes here. So right now we got Matt and David.
Yeah, I don't see how this is a planning issue. Granted, I'm not familiar with how planning works on the islands. I see it as simply a community issue. So I think the best course of action would be to hold a meeting and see if we can get that landowner to sign the lease. And hopefully that's not a planning issue. It's just simply getting people involved.
I'll respond to the planning issue. It's that the special purpose local government in their OCP says residents and visitors are encouraged to work with the RCMP to develop crime prevention strategies. So this is about activating their document to motivate the islanders to respond to the official community plan. That's the one of the avenues. David, you got something?
I'm certainly, if anything to help the RCMP with this issue. I'm just wondering, is there an opportunity to deal with the current wharf managers in New Brighton and actually create a facility on the dock to park a vehicle?
The asset is owned by the Squamish Nation. Currently, that's a parallel process if you're talking ports. It hasn't, as far as, again, that political aspect of reaching out to the Squamish Nation has not happened. No.
But is it an option? Because there is space on the dock to park a vehicle. There's power on the dock. It would just be a case of creating appropriate containment or shelter for the vehicle in that position.
It could be. So possibly using an alternative to the tack that's been going in terms of co-locating it with the BC Hydro compound. Darnelda, you got something here?
What if this committee was to request that the board write a letter to the Islands Trust and request and kind of couch it like the RCMP are offering to provide a multi-purpose safety vehicle on Gambier, and request that they use their mailing list, because I know they've got a huge mailing list. They can email everybody on the island and say, this is what they're looking for. They're looking for a secure place to park the vehicle. If you have an idea or are willing to be the location and you're close to where they would come, please come forward. There is compensation. never know. Somebody might just say, I got a spare garage. It's secure. I'm willing to let them park it there, and you're done. You got it.
Okay, well, I'm open to a motion here or
That's
for
a
a
motion.
recommendation. Anyone want to second that idea? David, that's a second. Okay, so we're on the floor here. So let's have a little discussion about this. So we have a rough motion of the language is close enough for you. Who's recording? I don't know if we have a recorder here. I don't know. Do we actually have someone recording minutes here?
Hi there, this is Tracy. Yes, I have a recommendation here. The Sunshine Coast Policing and Safety Committee recommended that the SCRD write a letter to Islands Trust requesting they reach out to the community for support on the initiative to have to find a suitable location to station the RCMP vehicle on Gambier Island.
Okay. You got thumbs up. Any further discussion on this topic?
I think, Mark, you'll know kind of how to coach it in the letter, right? To put the
Well, would it come from chair or
the chair? But I think you know what you want to say in the letter. It's an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity. It's not like we want to do this. It's an opportunity that's being offered, and we're looking to see how it could be facilitated on the island, basically.
Yep. So any further discussion on that? David, you got something?
I think the intent is to be operating this vehicle out of New Brighton.
At this point in time, that's been the target, yeah.
Well, only that's where the most of the roads are, but they don't connect to the whole island, which is a bit of a disconnect. But I think as long as it's couched that it's out of New Brighton, that's fine.
So would we need an amendment to that, or is it that can be considered within the language in terms of the details? Like who would actually draft the letter is?
We'll get another kick at this at committee or the board.
Okay. Yep. Okay. So let's call the question on this. In voting in favor of the motion on the floor. Okay. Any opposed? All right. Done. Thank you very much. Well, I think we're getting to, we have another meeting coming up. So there is, we're going to run, we've had a bit of a roundtable. Is there, before we close, is there anything that anyone would like to say or speak with? Oh, Darnelda has her hand up, and David. Sue, I'm just going to ask, maybe prompt, have you got any comments, because we haven't heard from you today?
Yes, I've been very quiet, paying attention. No, actually, I just wanted to quickly say that in the past, since I've lived on the Sunshine Coast for, eons, and was formerly a mental health worker and outreach worker, that we did do a similar program to the CAR 67, where we did ride along, and we ran an outpatient drug treatment program on the coast for 10 years. So we were primarily working with youth in that capacity, but with the hospital and with, it was happening. And so I just wanted to say that it's not impossible with the population and everything, because the population, this was in the late 90s and early 2000s. So it was very successful. I ran a 24/7 helpline in the community. So I was on a pager at the time. That was the way that we communicated. And we were out there, and we were able to do very similar to what you're talking about. So it's all possible. I'm really for it. I think it's a really promising program in the community. So happy to hear. And that's about it for me. Thanks.
Thanks for telling us about that. Yeah. So last two, Darnell and Andreas.
Yeah,
Final
really
comments.
quick. At our committee of the whole meeting on Wednesday, we recommended that council approve in principle to hire another municipal member for the RCMP. That will go in, it'll come through budget, and we have to send a final confirmation letter after budget, April 26, 2021. That's it.
Thank you. And last is Andreas.
Yes, thank you. And something that I should have probably brought up earlier was regarding that thing on Henderson that's going on. I'm just wondering if there's any way where bylaw can be of assistance or should be of assistance or could help with the cause. And so I don't know if Poppy has some comments regarding that.
Yeah, we've been talking with Marvin, and he's issued some bylaw tickets, and his concern, and this might be the appropriate place to bring it up, I'm not sure. He just said, you know what, they're not going to pay, like they may or may not pay. The only way to sort of really have them pay is if it goes against their property taxes. I believe that's what he said. And Andreas, you're in the email chains, I think. His concern was that, you know, he felt his bylaw tickets didn't have a lot of teeth. And so we actually had a senior management team meeting in regards to that property. And we actually sought some advice, some legal advice from Vancouver around some of the photographs and things that we were provided, and identified some of the subjects who've been coming and going. And Corporal Philatui's been assigned to that investigation. We may look at, if these people don't settle down, that we'll have more than enough to lay criminal code mischief charges, because they're preventing or interfering with the lawful enjoyment of their neighbors' properties. And there's more than enough people with enough complaints. The big thing is asking the neighbors to actually call 911 when it's happening. I know they did this past weekend, but we hadn't had a police call to that location since July. So in order for us to demonstrate mischief, repeated interference, we need to have more, like they would need to be making more calls to the police.
All right, Andreas.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Okay, so I guess we're going to wrap up here, but I would like to say to Poppy, thank you for the frontline workers. I don't think we've acknowledged the RCMP as frontline workers before during the COVID, and my learning about it. It's a tough job, in the best of times, and I think it's even more so. So hands up to the RCMP officers and the frontline workers for the job that they're doing and keeping us safe. Yeah, it's a challenge. Thank you. So. Okay, motion for adjournment. Can I have a motion for adjournment? Thank you. And all those in favor? Thank you. And I guess that's where I always forget. There is someone in attendance. So do we need to promote them for questions, or how does that go? I'm looking for Connie is there. Connie is gone. Connie is gone. So no one is there. So we are done, folks. Thank you very much.